what to do with your fantasy squad if you go on vacation, how to help friends when you take over their squads for a short time. Should you bid $42 or make it $43 on your weekly fab pickups? We'll answer these questions and more coming up next on Beat the Shift. And welcome to another episode of the Beat the Shift podcast. I am your host, Ariel Cohen, and with me as always is Ruvain Guy. What's going on, Ruvain?
Not much. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. I had a great league in softball. I threw a shutout in the A-League on Monday and one run the following night in the other league, the B-League. We're just doing so great. I love playing ball. I'm playing pickup games with my son after work. Just having a ball here, you know?
Yeah, I hear. I'm actually living vicariously through my son. I'm taking him to baseball practice with a pitching coach, private pitching coach who has some major league experience, which is interesting. So just to try to up his game, get ready for next year.
Are you still playing in your night league? Are you still doing that in softball?
I'm on the roster, but I haven't been able to play just because of all the rainouts and because of all the conflicts in schedule. So I haven't yet played, but I heard my team is doing okay.
All right, sounds good. Well, we've got a great show tonight, and I want to welcome onto the show. He's been on before, Pierre Camus from Fantasy Endgame. What's going on, Pierre?
Hey, thank you for having me back as always. I have to live vicariously through both of you in terms of athletes. I will say I'm putting up a pretty good season in MLB The Show, but that's as far as my athletic prowess goes these days. It's the PlayStation.
Yes.
there you go. Yeah, I've tried playing it. My kids beat me, so that's it for me, folks.
I still beat my son, so I can't play against him. He gets very upset and he throws the controller away, so I can't do that.
All right. Well, we've got a great show here. We're going to do some strategy, talk about some topics we haven't, about being on vacation and what to do there. It's our vacation episode. But we do want to get your take also on, and of course, we're going to do our buy, sell, hold, and all of our regular features. I do want to talk in our strategy section today about the waiver wire and fab and get your take, because that really comes up as the grind week to week. By the way, what kind of leagues are you playing in this year, Pierre?
Too many, as always, but I like to mix and match. I really like to try to have a variety of leagues. So got a couple of shallow leagues, my 12-teamers, 15-teamer, an 18-teamer, which I'm still not sure why I'm in. I think only 2 Dynasty, and then I do have my NFBCs, the 50s that I keep up with, and of course, TGFBI, which is probably the one I try to check most religiously. I'm hanging in there. I caught up with Derek Van Riper in my league the other day and then fell back behind him, but I'm still battling it out.
Very nice, very nice. By the way, do you focus on the leagues that you're doing well on? Is that what you do?
I try to keep them fairly balanced, but let's face it, there's always some leagues you care about a little bit more. My industry leagues, I tend to try to be a little more competitive, but I will say now I've noticed, because having a league in our community, our endgame community, so I try to get our viewers from the YouTube channel to interact with us. That's a big thing we do in football, and now in baseball I just have the one league so far, but I want to make sure I'm present, always there, and compete in that league to make sure that people know I am engaged, not just doing it just to do it. I try to not favor the leagues where I know I'm gonna do better in necessarily, but just certain leagues you care a little bit more about, the ones that have that tougher competition. So I would say I'm probably a little bit more biased towards those.
Totally. So in terms of fab waiver wire, since you are in a bunch of leagues, how much time do you spend on doing your fab each week?
Not enough. I know that because I'm guilty of this, being in them too many leagues. There's some times where I'm like, oh wait, it's Sunday night. It's about 11 p.m. Yeah, it's too late. I didn't get all my claims in, or I didn't adjust based on what I did earlier in the week. So I try to at least be active every single week. Let's face it, sometimes it's a benefit to not be too active because you overthink things. You'll add a player based on a hot couple of games, and you feel like you've got to make moves. It's easy. It's almost be too active, I would say, because not every player that has a good week needs to be picked up, and sometimes the players you do add can wind up being a detriment to your lineup, especially pitchers. So I just try to be reasonable about it. I don't want to go a week or 2 weeks without making any moves, but at the same time, I sometimes I'm like, okay, I got to back off. I'm overdoing it here. Right? Enough is enough. But when you have those leagues where there's a strict season-long fab budget, it kind of helps keep you in your place. So I think that's a good thing. By the time we get to the All-Star break, which is actually not that far away now, I'm okay being over half of my budget spent, but I don't want to be basically scrimping for dollars, come August and September.
So that brings us to this question here. Are you for or against making last hour changes? You set up your fab. Some people set it up on Friday, edit it Saturday, edit it Sunday, or just do it on Sunday. In the last hour before, it's due 10 o'clock at night or midnight or wherever your league runs, is it a good thing to okay, should I change it? Should I bid a little bit more to win it? I don't know. Do I really need this guy? Oh, wait a minute. This guy had a great Sunday. Should I put him in? Are you for or against the very, late 11th hour changes for fab bids?
Yeah, no, great question. Like I said, you can't overthink things, but I'm absolutely for this. And in fact, I think that's the best way to do it. You want to wait till the last moment. You want to wait until those Sunday games are finished, because with baseball, more than any other sport, everything changes every single day. Things change. I got stat line, injuries, of course, everything. I think if you are setting your fab at, Wednesday, Thursday, even the day before, and you just forget about it and you don't double check, you're doing yourself a disservice, because there might be a bid that you put in there and then you regret it because, that pitcher that looked great all of a sudden had a bad outing, injuries, like I said, mentioned, promotions, demotions. So I actually, in certain leagues, wait until the last minute intentionally before I even set my fab, because I feel like I'm making the most informed decision and I have the most current information.
Reuven, your thoughts?
I don't love doing that. I have done it in the past. I don't love it because then you start to overthink things, and sometimes your first intuition is the best one. You don't want to overspend on players you don't have to overspend on. What normally I do, I look throughout the entire week. I'm looking at the waiver wire. I'm looking at injury reports. Preparing even just for this podcast, preparing for my article. I'm doing all this research during the week, so I have all the information in my head. Usually Sunday morning, it's quiet in my house. I go through my waiver wire list and I see who I have and what's going on. I try not to touch it Sunday night, because if I touch it Sunday night, I'll end up either raising the bid too much or lowering it too little, and I just don't want to do that. I watch during the day, see if any of my players get hurt during the day, and I have to make another pick, but otherwise, I try not to touch it Sunday night. Sunday morning I will, because I'm a little bit more calm then.
Yeah, so if a player is going to get injured on Sunday, obviously that's a valid thing to change in the last hour. And, if a player has a great Sunday and you're going to bid on him, you have to think a little bit of, well, if I really want to acquire him and he had a great day, maybe somebody's going to up the bid, right? Is that not a fair thing to do, Reuven? To say, well, if I put in $60 and he went 0 for 2 the other day, but on Sunday he had 2 homers, well, I think 65 is not going to cut it. Maybe I go to 95. Is that not a valid thing to do based on the current information?
I don't love it. I really don't like leaning that way. Listen, there are rumors now that Harry Ford's going to be called up because there may be an injury to Mitch Garver. Not sure. He's a catcher, and there are a lot of injured catchers out there, which I'm going to talk about when I get to the injury update. But there are a lot of injured catchers out there, and he's a guy you may want to pick up. Is if he hits, let's say, hypothetical, he doesn't do anything on Saturday. He plays Saturday, plays Sunday. He hits 3 home runs on Sunday. Is that going to change my opinion on who Harry Ford is as a player, just if he has one big game?
No,
I don't think
it
so.
might change the bid that you need to get to put in to win the bid.
But it doesn't matter, because his value in my mind is not going to change. I don't need to have that player. I have a certain idea of how much money that player is worth. If he's worth that much, I'm not going to overpay just because he had a big Sunday. That's what.
Well, what about a closer? What about, let's say, a new team? I don't know who the closer is, and it's 8 o'clock on Sunday, and look who closed the game. I mean, wouldn't that be a big factor because you just didn't have the information about the playing time about the closer?
Yes, and no. I mean, if there's a possible closer, it's probably gonna be on my list anyway because I like middle relievers, so they're probably gonna be on my list. So maybe I'll increase the bid just a little bit, but I'm not gonna go overboard.
Okay, Pierre. How do you decide how much to bid on Fab?
This is really where, and I think I understand not everybody has time or wants to manage multiple teams, be in several leagues. I can't help myself anymore, so I just do it. But I really think it's a benefit because even if maybe you don't put 100% focus and you don't have time to really try to invest to win in everyone, it helps you become a better player because you get a perspective, right? You get a better perspective on what a player might truly be worth as opposed to what maybe people in one particular league are willing to go out and spend for him. And, same thing with trades, especially. So really, when it comes down to how much you bid, it depends on your league. That's pretty obvious, right? Every league isn't going to bid as aggressively, and so you got to know what have similar players been going for lately. How much is this team? Let's say the one who tends to be the most aggressive in free agency. What do they tend to bid up? How much money does everybody have left at this point in the season? So I know in an NFBC league, it's a 15-teamer. The waiver wire is a lot more thin. The competition is more fierce. You're going to have to bid probably a little bit more than you want to, but if you really prioritize a player, you're going to have to do it. So that's really the bottom line is how much do I think it's going to take to get this player that I really want? And if it's a player that you like, has like a backup plan, let's say, for example, it's a 2-catcher league and okay, I have 2 catchers. I don't love my second catcher. I want a third on my roster just, in case, just to mix and match. Throw out $1 or $2 bid and have that player ready on standby as a backup, ad just because you need them. I don't need to spend more than that. And if I miss on that guy, oh well, I'll put $1 bid on somebody else. So it really comes down to that, knowing the league and how much it takes to get what you need.
Do you look at it from a dollar perspective? Like if you're in the NFBC and it's out of 1,000, are you looking at it on a dollar perspective, or are you looking at it on a percentage of a budget remaining for you?
Percentage makes the most sense to me, just intuitively. Think about intrinsic value. But I think once you get towards not even the middle, but like let's say a few weeks into the season, you look at the specific dollar amounts that players have gone for, and then you can kind of move up or down from there. The big rookie call up, that happened a few weeks into the season. Let's say it was Nick Kurtz, back when he was first called up. How much did he go for? Okay, now Roman Anthony's coming up. Well, it's probably going to take a little bit more to get Anthony than it did to get Kurtz, but it's going to be somewhere in the same ballpark, right? And then you just kind of move up or down from there.
All right, Ruvain, what do you do?
I'm actually looking what people have been bidding the last couple of weeks before I put a bid in. I'm seeing what the high watermark is, and am I willing to go to that level, and just keep track of what the high bids were for the last couple of weeks for the top players. And I think I just based it on that. And also I also see how much fab I have left compared to others because I like having the hammer at the end. And Pierre, you said that you want to have you don't mind having a little bit less after the All-Star break, which is fine. But when it comes to September, I want to have the most. I want to be able to control the fab, get who I want, or keep players away from other teams.
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of those things. I certainly, I certainly look at prior bids. What has been the high water mark? Okay, if I really want a guy, have people been going past the $70 threshold? Have people been going past the 40? If it's a guy that's just an injury replacement, we're talking just a couple of dollars. What has that been going? For a closer, what has the market been going? The in-season market, I think, is important to look at. And yes, you have to look at what you have left to spend versus everybody else. If you've got $100 more than the next person, you can easily spend the 100 if it's a key player that you need, and you'd still have purchasing power because you'd still have more than everybody else, right? I mean, the fab, you're bidding against everybody else. So if everybody else has $100 and you've got $500, I mean, just looking at the dollar amount and saying, well, $10 should bid him, that's silly. If you need the player, you've got $400 to work with, and you'll still be at the top of the line compared to everybody else. So you definitely have to see where you are. Purchasing power is the economic term that really applies here. But I want to go even a little bit deeper on this. How do you know, Pierre, whether you should bid 40 versus 42 versus 45 versus 48? Because obviously you have to put in a specific dollar amount. what do you do to get the exact number? If you say, all right, I got to spend like around 40. Well, are you going 39? You going 42? Like, what do you actually do for that very specific question?
So that's where it comes down to the player himself. And I hate to use the term need, but you need, let's say, a player at a certain position. Let's say you're a little low on strikeouts, let's say, and you want a pitcher. You're looking for somebody who's out there who might help you in that specific category, but you really like the upside. So for example, a couple weeks ago, Lance McCullers caught fire, right? All of a sudden, he's actually healthy, he's pitching, and he looks great, and he's striking out a ton of batters. All right, so I can pick up a guy like, let's say like Luis Severino, someone who is up and down, and I know he can get me some strikeouts, or I can go with the guy who I think is going to give me a little more upside, a guy who is helping me in that category, a little bit more risky, but who do I think is going to give me more potential benefit long term? Or just you have a good feeling about a guy, you just think, this is a young pitcher on the upswing. I want him a little bit more. I feel like this could work in my favor. I'll bid a couple dollars more, as opposed to, your player who, looking at the stats, all right, can help me in this, not going to hurt me in that, and I feel like he's a good fit for what I'm looking for. I'm just not as excited about them, right? And so that's when it comes down to kind of almost like a gut feel, right? Do I think this guy potentially has the upside long term to help me more than what he should be valued for? And do I really want to beat out the competition? If it's not a big deal to me either way, I'll put the standard bid out. But if I really want him, I think it's going to be worth spending those extra couple dollars.
But I'm going to push back a little bit on that because, there's one thing to say I'm going to spend 50 versus 40, but, what's the difference to you between 41 versus 43?
Well, this is where it goes back to what is it going to take to get him? Like if I think the standard bid, if everyone else is putting out 40, 42, whatever it is, I'll spend up a little bit more. There's no science to it because you have no idea what your league mates are going to bid. And sometimes you are way off, right? Think you can get a guy for $45 and then somebody spends 90. Like, oh, well, you weren't going to get him anyways and it didn't matter.
Do you agree?
Well, see, I don't. That's perfect. I agree with that. The only thing I would say is make sure that you have a different number each time because you don't want to be predictable. Because if you're looking for a catcher and someone else is looking for a catcher and someone's doing a deep dive, you don't want to have the same bid and just be randomly outbid by $1 or so. You want to make sure that you're changing it up. You don't want to be predictable. You want to make sure that every time they don't know what you're going to bid next. That's what you want. You want to be unpredictable.
Yeah, I think that the cadence, 56 versus 57, I think that you don't want to show a pattern of, I always bid on the sixes. Believe it or not, I've actually seen people only bid on the twos or only bid on the ones, 42, 52, 62. You want to bid higher than what the other person is, but you want to show a different cadence each time. I'm not going to say that there's a science to it, but there's definitely an art to doing it in terms of being predictable or not predictable, I think. Okay, the question is, you're researching the fab, Pierre, and this will go into our vacation topic, but, if you're low on time for research, how are you prioritizing your time? Are you prioritizing teams that you want to pay attention to more, that maybe you have a better shot than others? Are you prioritizing just looking at the needs for injuries first? Are you looking at, I got to first find who are the hot players each week or who are the, pickups each week? Or are you prioritizing, look at your own squads for drops? Like, if you only had a little bit of time, hey, Pierre, here's a gun to your head. You've got 2 hours on the computer right now. Do your research. What are you prioritizing when you're making these fab bigs in a pinch?
Well, I think it's got to come down to the needs for your team because not every waiver wire ad is going to be of equal value to each of your teams. Again, assuming you're, managing multiple teams in different leagues, but you might be stacked in one category for one team versus another. Maybe your pitching staff doesn't need any help. Are you really going to need or want to spend up on Chase Burns and hope that he pans out, as opposed to a different league where you need those Ks, right? Even if you take some bumps, here and there, as far as ratios, you don't know exactly how he's going to perform, but it's worth the upside because if he does pan out, that's helping your pitching staff. So I think it really comes down to the needs of your team because, again, it's easy to just blanket say, this is the top pick of the week. This guy's the next, and prioritize them in order. But you have to look at the standings. You have to look at your roster. You can only have so many shortstops, and if you have two really good ones, and one's in your utility spot, one's in your middle infield spot already, and you need another one, is it really worth spending up on another guy who's on the waiver wire who's a shortstop if he's on your bench, or if you have to bench somebody else? And you can't assume you're just going to make this great trade that works out in your advantage. So, I really think it comes down to what's helping your team statistically at that point in the season.
Uvain, what are you prioritizing if you had only an hour or two?
Well, I'd look at my team, and what we do actually, and a sneak peek in what we do when we look at our teams, we actually go through the roster every week of who should stay and who should go. And I mean, obviously there are ones that are obviously going to stay, but a couple weeks ago, I think we were discussing it with the labor team where we have Francisco Alvarez, and I had mentioned to you, I think about 2-3 weeks ago, maybe we should drop him, and then last week we finally decided to drop him. But I think it goes by looking at your team, looking at needs, looking at what can help you most in the standings. It doesn't have to be in one at this point in the season. It doesn't have to be specific categories, because you want to make an overall move up at this point. You want to just keep steady. You want to be moving overall up. And I think maybe in like August or September, or even the end of July, you can start focusing more on specific stats. But you have to find the weakest link, and you have to say goodbye.
There you go. So talking about vacation, and we haven't really talked about this at all, and this comes up because people go away in the summer for vacation. People go away for a week, 2 weeks, a month. I don't know. Sometimes you have access to your computer or phone or fantasy league. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you're halfway around the world, and your lineup setting is just not at an opportune time to do them. How do you manage? Because I know, Pierre, you just took some vacation recently. How do you manage your fantasy teams if you're on vacation for a week or so?
Well, in that sense, it's probably different from the average fantasy player because, having a YouTube channel based on fantasy baseball and football, I can't really take the week off of that. And I tried a little bit, but I still had to film on vacation, which it's not exactly a chore, right? Having to talk about baseball. So I'm still managing my teams because I have to be, informed and up to date so I can still talk about it. But I understand for some people, it's not your number one priority if you're on vacation. So I'll just say this. First of all, if it's an actual vacation that you're taking for pleasure, especially with your family, and you know what? Don't worry about your fantasy team for a week. It's okay. It's okay. It'll survive. Baseball is a very long season.
And by the way, that's what I tell all the players who I play against in our home leagues. I say, guys, you're on vacation. Just don't check it.
Yeah,
just let it roll. Ruben, we used to play in a league where there was a guy who went up to the summer for like sleepaway camp, with his kids for like 2 months, and he would literally not check it for 2 months, and he would actually usually do well originally, and he'd always be in like first, second place when he went up there, and by the end of summer, he was always in like 8th or 9th place.
Yes.
2 months is a little extra.
Well, if let's say you're going to work at a camp or something like that, or something like that, that is a possibility. And a lot of times the reception's not going to be great there. So if you do want to manage your team and you don't want to just do a complete break, then you should always. What I do is I actually try to set my lineup before I even look at the fab. I set my lineup for the next week and see if possibly I need anything in the future. What do the schedules look like? Am I looking to get a 2-star pitcher the following week? What am I going to do? And then I have to make sure that where I'm going is going to have Wi-Fi, because if you don't have Wi-Fi, it doesn't matter if you try to get on, you can't get on. And make sure you have all the websites and apps on your phones pre-saved before you go away, and not try to do it, then and there. So, it is doable, but like Pierre said, just enjoy your vacation and have fun. Your team's not going to fall apart in a week unless you have catastrophic injuries.
Well, I mean, I also would say that it helps having a partner in a lot of leagues because, if you're not there, they can pick up the slack and do it. That's definitely a big part of it. If you're on vacation, when should you be checking the waiver wire? I mean, let's say, a lot of times you're on vacation on Sunday, it's really tough. I mean, for me at home, Sundays are tough because I'm playing ball, I'm doing stuff with the family. Sundays are tough in general, but if you're on vacation, you may not have the Sunday. Is it just check it as late as you can up until the waiver wire time? Is that the best advice?
think so. Again, the more informed you are, the better. Go ahead and wait as long as you can. Gives you more time if you do happen to sneak in a moment to do some research. I think it makes sense. Realistically, it might not be an option. You might just have to take whatever opportunity you do get. But again, with baseball, it's easy to get overwhelmed by 1 week or one series and things that happen. It is such a long season, and the things we think make major differences often don't in the end. Your star players are going to help carry you. The fringe players, you'll mix and match, and yes, you need to stay active, but at the same time, that 1 week is not going to be what ultimately decides your place in the standings.
So let's say I'm on vacation and it's a league, Ruvain, that we're not doing together, and I usually would ask you, hey, Ruvain, can you fill in for me? Just in general, what information, if someone in general is asking a friend to cover for him, what information should they ask you to do? Do you think that, I mean, I guess it depends on the person, but should you just say, hey, take care of my team and do whatever you want? Should you give specific instructions of pick up a pitcher? Should you actually say pick up this person, this person, this person, and do this and check for injuries? Like, how detailed do you think you should be on giving instructions to the person?
Well, it depends on how informed this person is, because you don't want this person to screw up your team for the rest of the year. So I think you should just tell them just to set your lineup for sure. Definitely, that's definite. And to make sure you don't have any zeros. That's why you want to make sure there are no injured players in your active lineup. If you want to try to do pickups, that's fine. But I think if you want to, then you have to give the details of how much money you want to spend and which players you're okay with dropping and everything like that. Otherwise, he may end up dropping someone you don't want to drop, and that's not how you want your fantasy season to go down the tubes.
I actually once this is a true story. I can't remember the player is, but I think somebody who I asked to proxy for me, he accidentally dropped like Freddie Freeman or somebody up top, and he's like, "Oh no, Ariel, I dropped him. I tried getting the commissioner to do it, but he said no. What do I do?" And I'm thinking to myself, "Oh God, really?" Yeah, so it's tough. I'll ask you the flip question, Pierre. If you're the one filling in for a friend as a proxy, how do you make decisions if you can't communicate with him? So let's say he just says, go take care of it, and all of a sudden on Sunday, 3 guys get injured. How do you know how much to, well, I better drop this guy for him. I better start this guy, right? Like you want to be able to do the right move, but you might be apprehensive in dropping players. Maybe the guy really wanted him. Oh, well, he's going to turn it around. Like what? How do you actually proxy for a friend? What's your rules to live by?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's no easy answer. I'm in. I can't say it's the same situation, but similar. This season, just a few weeks ago, I was asked to, I guess, temporarily take over, though with no definitive timeline, for someone who kind of went MIA, and someone had been having some health issues, and so this was a league where I don't personally know the owner, but I was asked by the commissioner, because I'm in one of his other leagues, could you manage this team, for however long we need to? So I said, okay, sure, I can do that. So for the first week or two, I set the lineup. If there was some fat that needed to be trimmed, guys who were obvious drops, I would do that. I would try to pick up, some frontline waiver wire options, but I kept it at a minimum. And then once that first couple weeks, passed, and I'm like, okay, it seems like this might be my team for the rest of the season, if not at least, a few more weeks. I said, okay, I'm going to try to do the best I can and make this a contender. And I managed it as if it was my own team. Now, if you're doing this just for like a week or two, I think you're just going to have to take that first tactic and say, okay, I'm going to make sure the best players are in the lineups. If there's an obvious waiver wire ad that everyone's trying to get, someone who needs to be prioritized, I will try to pick them up. But I'm not going to go cutting half of the team just yet because, it might come back to bite you in that sense.
And you wouldn't spend half his fab either. You have to make the proper bids also. You have to be, you don't want to screw him over. You're babysitting. You're not creating it as your own team.
Right. That's exactly it. You're babysitting. You're tending into it. You keep an eye out, but again, it's not yours. If you know that this is a temporary situation, your job isn't to be making all these trades and wheeling and dealing and try to. No, your job is to kind of keep doing what that manager had been doing, and hopefully a little bit better.
And then, of course, you played for him for the rest of the season, and that team beat your own.
Yeah, well, luckily in that league,
You didn't
I
say
didn't
no.
have
You
really
didn't
have a
say
team.
no. Right? I didn't hear you
Yeah, well,
say
either
no.
way, you win. It's a
That
win-win,
can
right?
happen. Yeah, that can happen. Either way, you could say you won, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So what did happen? You did beat yourself?
No, well, this is still in progress. This is a
Oh, it's right
team
now.
right now. So
You
we'll
traded
see what
yourself
happens.
Soto?
We'll
Did you
find out.
trade? Oh, I think we should trade Soto for Mickey Moniak.
That might get vetoed. I think the rest of the league might frown upon that. So yeah.
Yeah. All right. We're gonna do our buy, sell, hold, but before we've got our Injury Gurus trivia of the week.
So our buy, sell, hold segment this week, we're going to be talking about pitchers. So my trivia is going to be based around pitchers and the ones that we're going to be talking about, obviously. So this is the trivia question for you, Pierre. Let's see if you can get it. There were 6 starting pitchers over the past month, 30 days, who have had over 40 strikeouts. Who are they?
6 pitchers with over 40 strikeouts
In the last
Okay.
30 days or month, yes.
I'm going to throw an out, which I think we might talk about on waiver wire, and I know he's been going crazy. Is it Yusei Kikuchi one of them?
Yes, Yusei Kikuchi is on the list. He has had 45 strikeouts this last 30 days. That's one of them,
All right. I know Ranger Suarez has been good.
but not that good. He's not really a strikeout guy, so he's not that good.
Scooball. Tariq Scooball's got to be on there.
School's not on the list.
Wow.
A lot of these guys you're mentioning have like 38 and 39, but I had to make a cutoff somewhere, so I did 40.
Mackenzie Gore has been striking out a lot of batters this year.
Not over the last 30 months, not 40 over the last 30 months. 30 days, I mean.
Spencer Strider, he's had a couple
Spencer
good-
Strider, yes, he's had 45 over the last 30 days.
All right, we got
I'll give you a hint. You mentioned Scooble. Think top pitchers.
Crochet.
Crochet, he's had 46 over the last 30 days. Paul Skeens has had
Skeens.
40. And there are 2 more that one actually pitched today, and one Ariel we have in almost every single one of our
Framber
teams.
Valdez.
No.
No. Oh, Logan Webb.
Logan Webb. Logan Webb is at 46
I'm just naming
strikeouts.
pitchers we have. Yeah.
And the guy with the most strikeouts over the last 30 days, Grant Holmes. He's had
No.
47.
Wow.
Yes. That includes tonight.
Okay. All right, he gets the benefit of an extra star. I will say this. I actually got to see Grant Holmes pitch in person when I was in Miami for my vacation recently. Made the Marlins look like, okay, he made them look like the Marlins. They're the Marlins, right? He got the benefit of the doubt there. But he's a guy still, he's like Kikuchi, no idea any given start. What are you getting out of Grant Holmes? So that does surprise me, but it doesn't surprise me.
But Yusei Kikuchi has allowed only 1 game of 4 earned runs or more the entire year. Believe it or not. And that was on April 26th when he gave up 4 runs, and he's getting all these strikeouts. I mean, people were worried that he wasn't pitching well, and what is he doing? Should we keep him? Should we play him? Anything like that? This month he's really turned it around, and I think he's definitely a guy to hold on to because he's got a history of having a lot of strikeouts.
I mean, he's still walking the farm though, but his strikeouts are really at the level they were last year.
His strikeouts, and he's on a team that's winning, so he's getting a lot of wins right now. The Angels are actually doing pretty well. So Pierre, is Kikuchi a buy, sell, or hold for you?
So Kikuchi has always been one of those players I've been very reluctant to buy in on because as soon as you trust him, right, he pulls the rug from underneath you. And it's interesting because you're right. He's been really effective, I guess, effectively wild because he's still got some walk issues. I mean, he was walking batters, and I know in one of my leagues he was dropped right before his most recent string of starts where he's been pretty dominant. He was still walking a ton of guys, like 4 or 5 batters. And, in one of my leagues, he's actually my endgame league where I have with my viewers, we use quality starts and not wins. And he's one of those most frustrating pitchers to own, right? 5 2/3, 5 innings. He's not getting you a quality start. The whip isn't great because of the walks, and you don't know exactly what he's going to do. So I understand why he was dropped there. And then, of course, in June, he's been, like you said, one of the best pitchers in the game. So You can't ignore what he's done. The strikeout numbers are there. Sure, even if you don't get necessarily wins or quality starts, he looks like he's on top of his game. But at the same time, I'm just ready, right? I'm ready for that start to come where he gives up like 8 runs in 2 innings and it all goes, out the window.
So a sell high right now.
I would sell high. Yes, I would. Because we've seen this before, right? This is not some pitcher with no track record, and even a Grant Holmes, like he's been in the game for a while, but this is his first extended run as a starter in his first, full year, like in the Braves rotation. There's still some, semblance of being an unknown quantity in that sense. And while Kikuchi's been striking out batters left and right this past month, he's still just a K per inning overall in the season, and the whip is not good. So I think this is a good time to sell high.
So, Ruvain, you say was a hold, and you say was a sell. I'm going to say he's a buy. I mean, since May 1st, I know his Sierra and FIP is bigger, but 2.07 ERA, 71 strikeouts in 65 innings since May 1st. He looks like the player from last year. He just does, and that's a very valuable player. These strikeouts are very, very valuable, and his cost is not that high. I think you can probably buy him at a decent cost because people will see the whip numbers, but he's just insanely valuable. So I really like him. By the way, Ruben and I actually did own Kikuchi in a 10-team league. We dropped him. It's a 10-team league early on, but we actually picked him up like a week or two later. He was not picked up, so woo, we got him back. But no, I say he's a buy. I'm not selling high because I think this is what he is. He's going to teeter around somewhat of a decent ERA, get you a ton of strikeouts. You'll have to live with the whip, but it is what it is. Next one, Ranger Suarez. I really like what Ranger Suarez is doing this year. I mean, he's very streaky year to year, but he's great in season. He's striking out literally 6 batters a game lately. His ERA on the season is at 2.08, but unlike Kikuchi, 1.03 whip. Phillies are surging, they're getting wins, and he's going deep into games. Lately, he's pitching almost 7 innings per start on average. To me, Ranger Suarez is another buy. Pierre, do you disagree?
I absolutely agree. I'm buying Ranger Suarez. What we've seen now to this point, for stretches, not quite half, but at least for stretches of 3 different seasons, he's been one of the best pitchers in the game, really. I mean, we saw it the first half of last year before injury. We saw it a couple years before that in the second half, and now we're seeing it again this year. I mean, he's proven that he can do this for an extended run. And I mean, the ratios themselves are the buying point here. I mean, there's really no way to say that he isn't, I'd say like maybe not ace, but SP2, at least 3 in fantasy.
Wow.
And with the dearth of starting pitchers and look at the injuries, like I said, Chris Sale is out, Michael King. I mean, how many more pitchers really can we rank ahead of him at this point? Strikeout numbers aren't gaudy, but they're good enough when you can get in a whip and an ERA that are that low. So I'm definitely buying.
Yeah, and I have him on like half of my leagues, and I bought him as like the SP6 or 7 with like a $2 auction price. And he was definitely an ATC buy, and so glad I did it. But even after he's done all this, I'd still buy him, even at a little bit of a premium. Ruvain, does it make it 3 for 3 as a buy?
3 for 3, buy, hold, because exactly what Pierre said. If you trade him or let him go, who's going to replace those stats for you? After that first clunker of 7 runs, he gave up 7 runs that first game, everyone got all nervous, is what kind of pitcher he's going to be. He has not gone less than 6 innings since then, and has not allowed more than 3 earned runs in a game since then. Now, last year, he collapsed a little bit toward the end of the second half of the season, but remember, this year he started off later, so maybe that second half swoon is going to be later in the year, so you may get better starts out of him.
Okay, Jose Berrios. Well, I'll let you go first, Pierre. What's your take? Is he buy, sell, hold?
One of my least favorite sayings, people say, "It is what it is," because that means absolutely nothing. That's like the most worthless sentence in the English language. With Barrios, I mean, he is what he is, though. I mean, there are no surprises here. He is exactly the same guy from last year, the year before. What you see is what you get. So if you know that you want a mid-3s ERA, a decent but not great whip, about, actually, I shouldn't say even close to a strikeout per inning, but a little bit depressed strikeout numbers. But he can get you quality starts. He can win some games. That's what he is. And so if you got him, I mean, you shouldn't be happy or unhappy. You should just say, hey, I got Jose Barrios, and there you go. So hold him. I don't think he's really a buy or a sell either way because he's not doing anything surprising here. I thought he might take a slight step back this year, but he hasn't really. So he is still what he is.
I'll go last. How about you, Ruvain? Jose Barrios.
I think he's a sell. And I'm saying that because I think you can quote unquote sell high here. In March, April, when the first month of the season, his ERA is 4.24. May, his ERA is 3.5. June, his ERA has been 2.52. His velocity is actually down across the board from last year. He's throwing the cutter more, though. But if you look at his ERA is 3.51, I believe, at this point. But his expected ERA is 4.60. If you look at that, I'm thinking, you know what? I think he's pitching I think he may be taking that step back. We just don't see it yet. And it may come in the second half of the season. So I'd actually sell him.
I actually agree with you, Ruvain. I'm going to go with you and say sell. I think you might be able to right now because he has a 3.5 ERA. You might be able to get some value, but you're right. Velocity down, walk rate still high. I feel like he's prone to the blow-ups, and that's not somebody I want to have on the roster, or at least somebody that I think I can trade and get something back a little bit better for him. So I'm going to go with sell. One more hot player to talk about, buy, sell, hold, Jose Soriano. Ruvain, why don't you go first? Are you buy, sell, or holding Jose Soriano?
I think he's a hold only because of all the injuries to all the pitchers that are out there right now. Last year, he threw a total of 155 innings, so he can give you that 155 innings. He seems healthy right now. Even though his K rate has been down, his ground ball rate is up, so he's going deeper into games. And I think he has like 9 or 10 quality starts ready this year. And when you think Jose Soriano in the beginning of the season, you didn't think already 9 or 10 quality starts in the season. Again, another Angels guy. The Angels are I guess they're overperforming. I don't know. And he's a guy that I think that if you can hold him, and if you buy him, he's probably going to be cheap because he doesn't have that name value with him.
Yeah, I'll go second here. His career ERA, not just this year, his career ERA is 3.45. He does have a high whip in his career, so it's similar to Kikuchi almost. Walks are still an issue. Strikeouts are okay-ish, not fantastic, not like Kikuchi, but he goes deep into games. So for leagues that count quality starts, leagues that count wins, points leagues, Jose Soriano is excellent. He just got through a stretch where he had to face Houston, the Yankees, and the Athletics. He gave up only 2 earned runs in those 20 innings with 28 strikeouts. I actually think he's also a buy. Do you agree, Pierre?
I do. So Soriano, this one's a little personal for me. And you guys are both good, with Ariel and Ruben. You're very objective, and you look at each player as in terms of values, of numbers. With Soriano, so before the season, I try not to be too big into the hot takes, but you got to have a player that you kind of say, okay, he's my guy, right? My guys. I had to do a my guys video. He was one of my guys. I thought this could be one of this year's breakout pitchers, and I identified him. I drafted him in, admittedly, too many leagues. Jose Soriano and Clay Holmes were probably the 2 pitchers I thought were the most undervalued on draft day. I thought could be great additions, back end rotation guys that could quietly break out. So I had to make the heartbreaking decision in May at some point to drop Jose Soriano in at least 1 or 2 of my leagues because it wasn't happening, right? He wasn't cutting it. And now, of course, here comes the stretch of maybe not dominance, but he's been really good. I really want to just completely buy into him and, head over heels, but I'm going to be cautiously optimistic. I'll say he's a buy because, it's definitely a buy low because he's still not even owned in a lot of leagues, universally speaking. He's not somebody that is rostered everywhere. He's got not even a 50% rostered rate on Yahoo leagues. That tells you something. He's just viewed as a streamer. But I feel like this is the type of pitcher I want to buy into because, A, high ground ball rate, really high ground ball rate, right? So better chance keeping it in the park. The strikeout numbers, okay, they're not great. They're okay, but it's just, can he hone the control? Can he stop walking batters? And it's gotten better. It's not great, but I think in June he's closer to like league average as opposed to where he was 10 or 11% earlier. So I really want this just to be his breakout season. I want this to be a thing because so Jose Soriano, I'm gonna buy back into you. Just please don't let me down.
Okay. Now on to our cold players and buy, sell, hold. Do we think that this cold streak will continue? Or do we think that this is just some unfortunate happenings and it's a buy? They'll regress up. How about Zach Gallen? Wow, the mighty has fallen. He's having a horrible year. The word is yikes. He does not look like himself. I mean, his ERA is sky high, and his Sierra is not as bad, but 4.42, still high. Walk rate of 10%. In the last 9 starts, he's given up 4 earned runs 8 out of the last 9 times. Yikes, 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 but we know what he is capable of. So is this a buy low as he just looks terrible now, or get away from him as quick as you can and he's even a drop? What do you think, Pierre?
This is probably the easiest one we've gotten, this whole show. I called him a drop candidate probably about 2 months ago. The very first cut list I did about a month into the season, and it said, look, this is a hard decision because it's a player that you drafted, let's say in the middle round. You expect him to be solid, consistent. But I saw some numbers early in the season that concerned me. It's just nothing that jumps out and makes you think like this guy's done for. And again, this is not a pitcher who's that old, right? He's not even 30, as far as I know. And just some of those peripheral stats concern me. I said I don't think he's going to turn around. And sure enough, other than for absolutely no reason, 2 dominant starts against both the Yankees and the Mets, every other start was really, really bad, and I haven't seen him turn around. So I called him a drop early in the season, and then a few weeks ago, people were asking, I called him a drop again, and there's nothing that's going to change my mind about him. I mean, it's possible he's in the trade block here if the Diamondbacks do decide they're not going to contend, but that's not going to make me love the player more.
Yeah, Ruvain, do you agree?
I agree, and I think this is the week to do it, and I'm going to explain why. Right now, he's started in 86% of NFBC leagues, and they're dealing with, for the past month and a half, you mentioned, Ariel, he's got an ERA of 6.62 with a whip of 1.5 over the last month and a half, which is crazy. So the question is, do you hold on to him because of name value? Do you hold on to him? Maybe you can turn around? Well, the question this week is that he's a possible 2-start pitcher this coming week. He may get the Giants and the Royals. If you're not playing Zach Gallen in a 2-start week, why is he on your roster? You're gonna keep a 2-star pitcher on your bench? I don't think so. I think he's just a clear drop.
Yeah, can you believe it? He's 2-start this week at home, and he's just hard to ride. I mean, he's got a 5.75 ERA. Yeah, I mean, if you're in a mono league, you're gonna have to roster him because there's not much else, and 2 starts will get you some strikeouts. But other than a mono league, I'd say all mixed leagues, 15, 12, 10, just he's a drop. I don't even know if you can get any trade value. If you can, great, but I think he's a drop. What about Zach Eflin? Zach is spelled differently, I think, between Gallen and Eflin. Zach Eflin, he's playing on a bad Orioles team that is really underperforming. The thing about Zach Eflin, though, he's not having a great year. His velocity is down from from 2 years ago when he had a great year. He's down 2 miles an hour. He's only pitching at an average velocity of 91. Strikeout rate has absolutely plummeted. He used to be 27 2 years ago. Now his strike rate is 16. But his control is still there. So, unlike Gallen, we can't find something good. Eflin still has that elite walk rate. He's only walking % of batters. So, to me, Zach Eflin is a matchup play. I think if I own him in 15-team leagues, I'm keeping him, but being a little picky and choosy where he plays. Same thing with 12-team leagues. I'd hold him, but be picky where he plays in matchups. In 10-team leagues, though, he's probably a drop. And, of course, in deeper leagues, mono leagues, he's obviously a hold and play. Do you agree with that assessment? We'll go to Ruvain first.
I actually do. I think he's a hold. I don't think he's a drop yet. I mean, his ERA is 5.46. His expected ERA, though, is 3.99. He's got his highest home run to fly ball rate in his career since he was in Philly, and he was like, he left Philly in with not, they didn't throw flowers at his feet when he left. But he's a guy who he is definitely a start by start guy, because in his last 11 starts he's got 6 quality starts. So and he's given up, but then he's also given up in those 11 starts, 3 of those games he's giving up 6 runs or more. You mentioned about his velocity going down, which was interesting to note that his velocity went down for the last few games, but the last game he pitched, his velocity was actually up a tick for the entire game. So it's very interesting to watch to see if his velocity continues to stay at that level or if it goes back down. But I think for now, I think he's a hold and just complete matchup play.
I've got Zach Eflin on a lot of teams, so I'm hoping he he turns it around. I'm not dropping him pretty much anywhere other than 10-team leagues right now. Am I doing it right, Pierre? What do you think?
Well, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, as I usually would. But for me, I've called him a drop probably about 2 weeks ago, and I'm sticking to that. I mean, I agree he can be a matchup dependent streamer, but good luck picking the right matchups. My problem with a pitcher like this, not just that he's been getting worse as this month has gone on, but I think that the benefit he gives you in his good starts doesn't outweigh the damage he does in those bad starts, because he's one of these pitchers that when he's bad, he's really, really bad. And without the high strikeout numbers, without as much hope for wins as we thought we would get in Baltimore, and I just don't think it's worth the damage, potential damage. And like I said, he's not getting better necessarily with age, so I'd rather just avoid.
He has gone 6 innings, 7 innings a couple times this year, so for points leagues a little bit better. So his next matchup is against the Braves. I'd say it's a sit, but then he's at home against the Marlins. And if I'm in a 15-team league, I sort of want that matchup, don't I? No?
You know what? It's tempting to say that, but actually, I will say this month the offense has been better. I think they actually been better than the Braves.
And you're a
sometimes,
Marlins fan, right?
and I'm a Marlins fan. I know,
They
unfortunately,
didn't
but
didn't they just swept the Giants, didn't they?
yeah, they'll we get tricked into this sometimes. Now, this is not the same thing, but let's say okay, like a Bryce Elder. This just sticks into my mind. Faced the White Sox the other day, and everyone's, you got to start Bryce Elder. It's the White Sox, and he got lit up. He faced the Rockies a couple of weeks before that, and everyone was starting him, and he got lit up. These so-called bad matchups sometimes don't turn out the way we think they will. And a guy like Eflin, I just don't trust to know when to start him and when not to. And like I said, when he's off, he's way off, because yeah, he doesn't walk a lot of batters, but he makes up for it by giving up a lot of loud contact.
All right. How about our last one, Bailey Ober? And the question is it over for Ober? Very similar in terms of his plummet, by the way, to Eflin. His strikeout rate from last year went from 27% last year to 18% this year. His walk rate is at 6%, which is okay-ish. Velocity is down 2 ticks from last year, from 92 to 90. That is absolutely concerning. Similar for me to Eflin. I think he's a hold for matchups, but I'm almost to the trigger point of cutting him as well. Pierre, thoughts on Ober?
I'm giving him a little bit longer of a leash, even though he's been objectively worse than Eflin this month. But what I'm doing with him is, I'll tell you, I'm benching, and in one league, it was fairly deep league. I think it's a 15-teamer, not an FBC, but a different one. And somebody dropped him. I said, you know what? Why not? I'm going to stash him. I'm not going to put him in my lineup until I see major correction, a course correction here. But I'm going to keep him on my bench until the second half and see if he works out whatever's going on. I don't know if it's a fatigue thing, I'm something that's nagging him. So I'm going to try to hold if possible. I would not blame anybody for dropping him. I mean, that's fine if you do, but I'm going to see if he can get back to being the old Ober.
All right, moving.
For me, he's a drop. His last quality start was May 25th. If you've been playing him, he's been killing your ERA and WHIP. And you know what? If your ERA and WHIP is shot, if you have both Bailey Ober and Zach Eflin on your roster and Zach Gallen, good luck to you. Your ERA and WHIP are probably shot for the rest of the year. And if your ERA and shot for the rest of the year, there's really no harm in starting him, because he's on a team that may get you wins down the stretch. I don't even know if Minnesota's going to be that competitive down the stretch, whether the rest of the team can stay healthy and everything like that. But he's completely stopped using the cutter, and he's using his slider more. I don't know why he's depending on that more. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know what they're talking to him about there. Maybe he doesn't have a feel for his fastball as much. I don't know. I have no idea what's going on there. But all I know is that I don't think he's rosterable right now. Even in a 15-team league, if he was on my waiver wire and I saw his stats, I don't think I'd pick him up.
All right, of course, we do have to ask about the Mets mascot race. The Giraffe, who have 0 wins in the mascot race this year. It is the Bronx Giraffe, that is. And he was about to win today, but somebody came out with a chair and hit him, so he didn't win. Is he a drop if you own him in fantasy? Is he going to win a game this year, or is he going to win a race? Pierre, what do you think? Will that happen?
I was privileged to see the mascot race just a few weeks ago, and I noticed the standings there, and then I put it together. It didn't take me long. I'm not a native New Yorker. The Bronx mascot here is winless. I don't see that changing. They might throw him a bone maybe at the very end of the season, but yeah, if you're holding out for hope here, then you just deserve what you're getting. So I'm going to say it's a hard drop.
Over under 2 wins for the Giraffe this year.
Going under.
Okay,
Under, and when you said drop, did you know that there were 2 wrestlers who threw out the first pitch and they dropped them in the backstage? Also, there's a video of that, of the Hardy Boys like teaming up and knocking him down. So he is a hard drop. I don't think Giraffe. And what about when the Yankees come to Citi Field? Do you think the Giraffe is going to win a race then? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so at all. Yeah, that's pretty sure bet that he won't. Okay, well, I'm sure you all are playing fantasy mascot, so hopefully that segment was good for you. All right, but back to real baseball. Waiver wire. All right, Pierre, if you're looking to pick up somebody this week, there's a couple of names that you want to pick up.
Yeah, so let's start, I guess, on offense. Look at the Tylers. I had a little bit of interest in Tyler Freeman in Colorado. Because obviously a little bit better. That's funny. Better environment for hitting, right? But anyways, it should be. And I know we don't want much to do with the Rockies these days, but they're turning around a little bit. Tyler Freeman has gone on a little bit of a hitting streak, and he can still use some bases. He's got a little bit of pop, so I think he can be a very useful player. I always like those players who qualify at multiple positions. So kind of an under the radar player there. And then Tyler O'Neill, should be coming off IL and potentially being really good for about a week or 2 before he goes back on the IL. So I will try each of those 2 if I need some help in either homers or steals in my fantasy leagues.
Tyler Freeman, I think there's a little bit of a story. He was traded to the Rockies for Nolan Jones. I believe that Nolan Jones is like his best friend, and something like Nolan Jones called him up and said, "Oh my God, Tyler, I just got traded to the Cleveland. We're going to be teammates." He's like, "Really? That's amazing." And then like 10 minutes later, Freeman was called. Okay, you just got traded to the Rockies. I was? For who? For Nolan Jones? What? And I think their best friends got swapped. Something like that in the story, which is really, really, really wild.
That's funny. Well, between the 2, I think Tyler Freeman is definitely the one. What happened with Nolan Jones, by the way? Are we holding out any hope for him to do anything close to what he did a couple of years ago?
I don't think so. I think if you're holding out hope for him, you should hold out hope for what's that outfielder that was traded to the Indians last year at the end of the year? The speedster from Washington.
Luke.
Who got hurt?
Oh, not Luke.
I'm
Boy,
drawing a blank.
the guy who stole a lot. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Oh dear Lord.
Both of those guys. I don't hold out hope. I don't think so. I think
Dear Lord, what's his name? I can't believe it. I can't remember. What's his name? On the
Is he still on the
the
Guardians?
Guardians. He's injured though.
He's on the Guardians. He's Oh my! He had a
what's his
grand slam in the
name?
playoffs. Oh my gosh! I'm drawing a blank.
I can't believe I'm drawing a blank. Lane Thomas.
Lane Thomas. Who has a better
said
chance
Luke.
who has a better chance of bouncing back? Lane Thomas or Nolan Jones?
Oh boy.
I'll take neither.
Exactly.
Let's take neither. All right, Ruvain, your waiver wire picks for this week.
Okay, so my waiver wire picks are going to have a theme. Let's see if you can figure out. I'm going to start with Drake Baldwin. He's the catcher for the Braves. He's only 46% on the CBS. He's splitting. He's basically splitting the playing time with Sean Murphy. He was 5 for 15 of the last week with 2 home runs, and for the year, he's batting 288 with 9 home runs. If you have a two-catcher league, he should definitely be owned. If you have a one-catcher league and you want to stream a catcher, he's a great guy to think about. Dylan Dingler, the catcher for the Tigers. He's 32% owned. This past week, he only batted 235 with a homer and 5 RBIs, but for the year, he's batting 269 with 8 homers. So if you need a catcher, he's available in most leagues. And I'll end with Gary Sanchez, who's a catcher also. He's batting 271 with a homer and 5 RBIs this past week with Adley Rutschman out. He's in there for his bat. He allowed 5 stolen bases the other night, so he's not in there for his defense. But he is 12% owned, and you don't play with his defense in fantasy usually. So he's 12% owned, and he can get you some home runs. And if you need a catcher, he's a perfect fit.
Well, I wonder what your theme was there, Ruvain. Was it third baseman?
No. You missed the point. Yeah.
Catchers. I had Drake Baldwin on my list. He definitely should be owned. I'll throw out two, which I think I might even mention last week also. But Jerkson Profar is coming back from suspension. Just interesting to me. And Mickey Moniak, he is heating up. You know, I always look when you're looking for waiver wire. I'm looking for people with changes in their playing time or lineup. Mickey Moniak is now batting regularly, like first or second for the Rockies. Great ballpark. He's hitting homers like crazy. Mickey Moniak is very interesting. He's very, very underowned. He's available in like most leagues. Maybe mono leagues he's owned, but he's available in 15-team leagues. You know. All right, pitcher preview. Couple of pitchers who might be good for the coming week or two. Pierre, who you're picking up for this week?
Well, a guy who's not only supposed to be a two-start streamer, but also I think we have to just pay attention to Jacob Lopez as a waiver wire ad. I was reluctant here. It's one of these pitchers where had that really good start early in the season when he first got back, into the rotation, and then immediately hurt everybody who started him the next time out. So he wound up giving up, I believe it was 7 earned runs in not even 2 innings. And so then he followed that up with another horrible start and was forgotten about. But then all of a sudden he's just rolling, just not giving up any hard contact. Now, it's tricky here because this is a pitcher who I know I just railed against Zach Eflin. He could do this to you, right? He's a heavy fly ball pitcher, and he's been able lately to be very efficient and not give up any home runs in the last 4 starts, but could always come back to hurt you. But I think we have to look into it. He's striking out a ton of batters. He's been good against some really good offenses, so I hate to use the word trust. I'm going to trust Jacob Lopez, and I'm going to pick him up and stream him where he's available. And then, also Max Scherzer. I've been a little reluctant to buy into an old injured pitcher, but he went 5 innings. I think he'll go deeper now that the thumb seems to be a non-issue. So Scherzer is also somebody I think is worth adding now.
All right, Ruvain, anybody to add?
Well, since this is the vacation episode, I decided to look toward Miami here. Edward Cabrera, I mentioned him last week. He's only 37% on CBS. He's actually a possible 2-start. Minnesota, Milwaukee. In his last 3 starts, he's got a 3.07 ERA with 16 strikeouts in 14 2/3 innings. So he's a guy, if you want to rack up some strikeouts, he's pretty good with that, and he has a history with it. And if you want to play against Miami, the Twins are coming into Miami. And if you want 2 guys who are not owned in a lot of leagues, David Festa, he's only 14% on CBS, and Simon Woods Richardson is only 5% owned. Now, I like the matchup of Woods Richardson a little bit better. It's a deeper play. He's only 5% owned, and his ERA is ungodly, but he's playing Miami, and the starting pitcher he's starting against is Jansen Junk. Now, David Festa is starting against Yuri Perez, so I'm not as thrilled with that start, but again, it's against Miami, so my prediction in the beginning of the year that Miami would be one of the worst teams, or probably the worst team in baseball, I'm doubling down. I'm going against Miami here.
All right, I'll mention a couple of guys to add. I mentioned him last week, Ryan Nelson. Ryan Nelson has been super. If you would have picked him up last week, you would have done yourself good. In the last 2 starts that he's pitched, he's thrown 2 hits. 2 hits. 14 strikeouts in his last 15 innings. I wish he went a little bit longer, though, into games. He's not making it past, like, the 5th inning. but he's to start at home against San Francisco and Kansas City. Jose Quintana playing at the Mets. Mets do have issues with lefties, and he's actually been somewhat respectable this year. A sub-3 ERA, 1.4 whip, but still, and he knows that a pitch in Citi Field, so maybe try Jose Quintana. And don't hit me for this one, but maybe German Marquez. Can I dare say a Rockies pitcher? He's at home also, but he's playing the White Sox. In his last 3 starts, he's given up only 1 earned run total. He's had 15 strikeouts in his last 14 innings. German Marquez, maybe? Could you be so bold in 15-team leagues to pick him up? Maybe. Consider it.
Go for it. Go for it. It's all you. You're more bold than I. Hey, you never know, right?
Maybe I'll drop Patrick Corbin and pick up German Marquez.
Well, it's funny you mention this. I do have Patrick Corbin in one league that I streamed because he had a 2-start week in a points league. You might see me go for German Marquez. I don't know if I'm going to do him in some of my NFBC leagues. We've got great pitching staffs, and we don't need him. But I might do it in a points league just to get those. You never know. All right. That's the end of the pitcher preview. Time for Ruvain's injury update. You mentioned a bunch of catchers, so go for it.
Yeah, we're going to get to that in a second. We're going to start with Tyler O'Neill. He's on the IL with left shoulder soreness. He was on a rehab assignment. He could be activated from the IL next week, so that's positive news. Corbin Carroll is hit in the wrist and has a wrist fracture. Right now, there's no timetable for his return, but usually a wrist fracture is 4 to 6 weeks, depending on severity. They said he doesn't need surgery, so that's a good thing. But Jake McCarthy was called up. He's a possible pickup, and Randall Grichuk should get more playing time as well. Gabriel Moreno was diagnosed with a hairline fracture in his right pointer finger and is on the IL. At first, they said it was a contusion, but a fracture can show up 5 to 7 days later. He could be out up to 3 to 4 weeks. Jose Herrera and Aramis Garcia are going to split time. Adley Rutschman, catcher for the Baltimore Orioles, has a mild left oblique strain. The manager there, Tony Mansolino, said that Rutschman is expected to be out at least through the All-Star break. And Gary Sanchez is the guy who's getting most of the playing time there. Miguel Amaya, who's on the IL with left oblique strain, he has begun a hitting program, and manager Craig Counsell of the Cubs said that Amaya should return around the All-Star break. Keibert Ruiz, catcher for the Nationals. He's on the IL after getting hit with a foul ball with a head contusion. We don't know how bad it is, but Riley Adams and Drew Malas could see playing time. Ivan Herrera, catcher for the St. Louis Cardinals, has been diagnosed with a grade 2 left hamstring strain. He's expected to miss anywhere between 2 and 6 weeks. If it is a grade 2, it's probably going to be closer to the 6 week. Yoho Pozo and Pedro Pajes will get some more playing time. Shea Langoliers, catcher for the Athletics. He's on a rehab assignment and should be back within a week, barring any setbacks. Now, Pierre, you mentioned Chris Sale. He was placed on the IL this week with fractured ribs on the left side of his rib cage. There's no timeline for his return, but it could be a month or two. Dieter Fuentes has been assured at least one more start for the Braves, who are playing the Mets this week, who will be getting back Sean Manaea within a week or two. He was diagnosed, though, with loose bodies in his pitching elbow this week. He had a cortisone injection, but he said he's going to get back on the mound next week, and we'll see how that goes. And earlier tonight, I hate to end with this, but earlier tonight I was watching the Met game, and Griffin Canning had a left leg injury, a non-contact injury. To me, it looked like it was an Achilles issue. They're saying it's an ankle for now, but he could not put any pressure on it, and he went down in a heap. So if you have him, just keep monitoring the news, but I think he may be out for a while.
Oh, dear Lord. Our Mets are going down. Sigh. But I do want to ask you, though, about the catchers, because, you mentioned a lot of catchers injured, and catchers do get injured quite often, right? And if you're spending money at the draft table on a premium catcher, you don't want them to get injured, right? They're worth a lot because they're so much better than replacement, but if they do get injured, and catchers get injured, you got to go to the bargain basement of crap waiver wire. And then what the heck did you spend all that premium on the catcher? You just could have punted the position or bought somebody cheaper. Do you think, Pierre, it's still worth it to buy a premium catcher, given that there's so many injuries?
As someone who drafted Adley Rutschman in several leagues, I'm going to say no. And look, William Contreras was pretty much the number one catcher drafted this year everywhere. And let's face it, I don't think it's too bold to say he's been kind of a bust. I mean, for where you drafted him, been disappointing. You can say, well, it's the risk, but that that happens, right? It happens to catchers more frequently, and none of the catchers that aren't named Cal Raleigh were worth drafting early, especially when this has been the year of the catcher in terms of all the rookies. And
Logan O'Hoppe, he's been pretty good.
yeah, yeah. There's so many options nowadays. I'm not going to say never again, but I'm pretty sure I'm not going to target a catcher early next year.
I mean, I think it makes the case to go catcher is a bad idea because it's a high probability that one of those catchers is going to go, and if you do, then you're at a value loss for a lot of the season. So,
But you can't draft a team based on the fact that you think they're going to get hurt. Otherwise, why would you draft someone like Acuna who has 2 ACL tears in the last 3 years? You just wouldn't do that.
No. But the catcher though, you're paying. Because of the replacement level is so low, you're paying the premium. You're not getting the stats. And if you have to, put it this way, Ruben, if you have to punt the catcher, and if your catcher gets injured, I should say, then you're going from whatever dollars you spent, and you're picking up like a negative $5 catcher at the bottom. Whereas if Acuna gets injured, you're picking up $1 or even higher.
But you're doing that, and if you do that, then if you're getting one of those lower catchers, they're going to hit 200, give you maybe 15 to 20 home runs. They'll help you with the home runs, but they're going to be a drain on your batting average. And not only that, those catchers that do that, they don't play full time. They're going to split time with someone else.
But you can get a mid-level catcher. What I'm saying is that I'm asking if it makes the case that you should maybe delete ones where there's such a premium. Maybe that's a bad idea, or at least go lighter. I'm just throwing it out there.
If the price is right and there's a bargain, it's hard to turn down a good bargain at the table, at the draft table.
True, that's true. I guess.
Well, and I would say this clarifying because I mentioned those injured catchers. It's really more so about performance. Contreras, Rushman, Yainer Diaz, the guys we thought would be pretty safe at that position. They just have not been that good offensively. I mean, flat out, it has not been worth it.
That only helps my argument, right? Because it's the injury plus the underperformance.
Right, exactly. And that's, to me, what it's about. It's like I could have picked up a guy like Logan O'Hoppe, even Agustin Ramirez. They're getting me more home runs than Adley Rutschman did. They're getting more home runs than William Contreras. It's like, what was the point? And the top catchers, which we think are such sure things, it changes from year to year. So, I don't know. I really like the idea of mixing and matching, especially with guys who don't play every day. So, for example, in the one league, I have Adley Rutschman. I put him on the IL. I got Drake Baldwin. I got Logan O'Hoppe. They were both on waivers, and I'm mixing and matching. I'm playing matchups, and I'm thinking, why didn't I do this earlier? Maybe I should have just done this 2 months ago. I could have dropped Adley Rutschman, and I probably would have been better off.
But I do agree that a catcher is not worth a 3rd round pick like William Contreras.
Right, that's the point here.
They should go maybe in round 7 or 8, like they used to. They used to do that, except for Sal Perez or back in the day when you had one set guy. But otherwise, a 3rd round catcher, and we were seeing Contreras even pushed up to the 2nd round. I thought that was crazy.
Yes, I think that's really the lesson, is that when you're paying that much of a premium and you're doing it at the 2nd, 3rd round level, that's already pushing it. So, 7th round, you're getting a relative bargain. We get it. But you're sacrificing a 7th round pick. There's a huge difference between a 2nd, 3rd to 7th. And so what I'm saying is I think the William Contreras buy this year, it was just absolutely garbage.
Right. That's exactly right.
Procedurally, not just because of the player, just the doing that act of saying draft a 2nd round player as a catcher is just silly.
Right, because he's going to be the best catcher, so of course this deserves a top 25 pick, and that's the faulty line of thinking. And to draw a parallel to fantasy football, it's like a tight end. Whoever was the best rookie tight end, the guy who came out of nowhere was a great tight end, all of a sudden that draft value is so inflated because, well, he's one of the best at that position. And at the end of the day, you have to realize he's still a tight end. He's not going to be, the same as having an elite wide receiver. And the same thing with catchers. I mean, we always have these exceptions. Obviously, Raleigh this year and, to some extent, Contreras last year. But it's still a catcher. I'd still would rather have had an ace, one of those pitchers that was available instead of where I took or didn't take William Contreras, a high-end outfielder. It's still going to be better for your team.
And we spent last episode talking about how buying that pitcher, buying the Crochet, Wheeler, Skubal, Skeens at the top, those were good plays this year. So,
Yep.
we're learning about the player pool and what again, this is a retrospective approach,
And
but
every year is different. And
every year is different. But I think the lesson for catchers is applicable to next year, I think.
Right. Absolutely. No catchers next year. None at all.
Well, I'm glad that we're getting strategy out of this, out of injuries here as well. All right. Once again, this has been a great episode. I want to thank Pierre Camus from Fantasy Endgame for joining the show. Always a fantastic guest when you come on. Why don't you just tell us what's going on with you?
All right. Well, got the YouTube channel, Fantasy Endgame Baseball, and also do have the flagship channel, Fantasy Endgame Football. So anyone interested, check out both of those, subscribe. And we do live streams, not just videos that come out every week, like the waiver wire video. I'm going to be putting one out tomorrow, like every Friday, and do live streams usually twice a week. So midweek check-in on Wednesday, and then on Sunday nights, talk about two-start streamers. So if you're interested and, check it out, jump on live, chat with us, ask your questions. I'd love to see everybody out there. So that's it. Also, enjoying a little bit of vacation while we got it.
Yeah, good for you, man. Good for you, man. Ruvain, what about you?
You can follow me on Twitter, X, at MLB Injury Guru, where I tweet out all these injury updates as they come. I also have a weekly article that's already out for this week on Rotoballer discussing all those catchers' injuries as well as all their other injuries and the next man up.
All right, I'm Ariel Cohen. You can see my stuff over at Fangraphs, over at Rotoballer, ATC NY on Twitter. ATC projections are up, and I believe there's going to be an update next week in time for half the season. And, of course, you can listen to me right here on the Beat the Shift podcast presented by Fangraphs. Once again, thank you so much to Pierre Camus for joining the show, and from all of us here at Beat the Shift. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Beat the Shift podcast presented by Fangraphs. Follow us on Twitter at beat_shift_pod.